Hello, can't hear you.
Zoom.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? This is fun and different.
Yes, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I was like, today I'm gonna have fun because I'm enjoying, the fact that I have the opportunity to speak to you. I really admire what you do.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Thank you for having me. It's very lovely. Thank you.
And I love to talk about, the arts and this
Yeah.
podcast. This interview is part of a podcast that I have been doing since the pandemic started. It was
Yes.
kind of an initiative that I have been, I was thinking for a while,
Uh-huh.
but it had to do with the idea of communicating with creatives to check on people, how people are doing, because it's not about only what we see in the stage. I want to know what is behind the scene.
Right. Yeah. That's
And
beautiful.
I just, yeah, go ahead.
No, I say that's beautiful. I appreciate
Yeah, and then yeah, I'm connecting with different kind of people, creatives that
it.
are making the difference in Miami. I think, in my opinion, and you're one of them.
Thank you.
Welcome. So, if I would introduce you, I would say that you are a marvelous dancer, choreographer, creative being, a spiritual being that has it's kind of living here for a while, like giving us the flow, her flow. Um, but I would like you to introduce yourself. Who are you?
I, God, that's a very good question. Isn't it? Who are you?
Who is Brigid Baker?
Right. Now more than ever, I have no idea. Uh, I don't know. I'm a woman, creative. Um, as you say, I base what I do is in choreography, but I create video and installation work. I create environments. I create, well, just about anything. Anything I learned to create from my mother, I create. But the basis of it is when I'm working with dancers in pure dance. Um, but I'm also very holistic person. For me, it's about the ecology of our world, the ecology of our communities, the ecology of how everything begins to reorganize itself around the tenets based in nature. And that's sort of where I take it from. I have a developed practice for movement that's based on many years of breath study and alternative healing and that kind of investigation in the arts and healing zone. So I combine that with my years of study in technical practice of dance. And I started as a musician. Um,
I love that. I have also. I'm a musician in my mind too. I study music
that's yeah,
in Cuba.
yeah. Once you have that,
Forget it.
it's a big deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
I come from. I'm a New Yorker. I come from a large family of 10 people. Um, we were poor, but extremely involved in education and the arts and community activism from the very beginning of our lives, and all of that informs me. Come from a long line of artisans and writers and musicians, everyone, my siblings as well as my grandparents, and also very big in community activism. So that's sort of the driver of um, my human and spiritual journey here. Um, and music informs everything that I do. I think it's a real big foundation, you know.
You are a very interesting person, and I'm not saying that to say anything. I really mean it.
Thank
But
you.
there's so much to talk with you. But I just wanna,
I'm good
I
at
wanna.
asking questions. I'm really bad at just sort of going on. I don't know what I'm
Don't
talking about.
worry, don't worry. I am a specialist in making questions.
Oh, good. We're a good team then. That sounds good.
I want to start talking about True School because,
Yeah.
as told you, my son had a brief, period there, but it was so wonderful. And from me, coming from New York too, because I'm a Cuban who was first in New York and then here, the fact that I reconnect with, hip hop and that I was able to, teach that to my son was such a big difference.
You. Thank you. First of all,
Tell me,
I have a Cuban extended family, just so that you know.
there you go. We
Nieces
are
and
family.
nephews, my sister-in-law. So it's like, so, um, I was a part of the New York downtown scene in the 70s and 80s, and I was in art school then for dance, but it was a unique school of where all of the arts were very integrated. And in New York, then, like, we created a band, and we were very much a part of the whole beginnings of hip hop, which is when that's like my hidden weapon. Because when people look at me, it's
Forget
not the
it.
first that springs to mind.
Forget it. That's your weapon.
I
That is
know,
part of your base, and that makes you who you are.
I
I,
know.
I can recognize myself in you in that sense.
It's so funny because I'm of course ballet and modern trained, but I was a downtown girl, and also the writers, Jean-Michel Basquiat was a friend of mine. That whole movement. So we had a band, and the band worked out of Unique Recording Studios. We created one of the first music videos. So at that time, even earlier than that, like Africa Mambata, I remember first meeting him. I knew about him, of course, because you could go up way uptown to a place called Disco Fever. And that was the first. Disco Fever was like, I
I
forget the
love
name of the
it.
guy. Some little
I,
crazy Italian guy ran it, but that was an
I
amazing
love the
place.
name of the place.
Right. That's where you first. I think it was called Disco Fever. I'm pretty sure I'm taking it out of my old lady brain. Um, but I remember, like, it was like, if you wore sneakers, it was $5. If you had hard shoes, it was $2 because everybody wore sneakers. So, but at any rate, that's where I first heard live all the different scratching techniques and all the different DJs and we were club people. I would do ballet rehearsals all day and clubs all night. So you got a chance to see the original crews, and they would come to the clubs and break up the clubs and dance, or you could go to Disco Fever, which is where I think I first saw them. No, he never played Disco Fever. I forget, by point of reason, by philosophy. I forget where I saw him, somewhere.
It's
But
okay.
my big memory of him first was at Mud Club. On the second floor of Mud Club, there was like a like a gallery, a big space, and all the writers were showing there. Fab Five Freddy and Jean Michel, and um, Africa Bombata was spinning there, and I bring up Unique Recording Studios because he worked there. That's where he first started to sample with, like, Kraftwerk, with the German music that was coming in. So it was a very kind of unique thing. But we were very aware of the originations of hip hop. We looked forward to the trains. We knew it was a dynamic coming from the youth of many different kinds of styles of music and statements coming together. I mean, basically, New York was bankrupt, and just it was a whole that was created by the young people. And I lived around the corner from. I worked at Tin Palace, which was an amazing jazz club. 4 doors down from that was CBGB, and so you saw the originations of all these things. That was my world. Those were my people.
Nice.
We were creating dance at St. Mark's, and with Judson, and the Kitchen, PS 122 had just opened. So that, I mean, it was a life mixed of these people. So when I I hadn't really thought, I mean, hip hop had gone in a very commercial direction for me for what I knew of it in my spirit. So that was that for that. When I came to Miami, the a couple of interesting things happened. I had a beautiful dancer who came and was a scholarship student of mine, and she said to me, "You know, you really should have hip hop here." And I was like, "I don't think so. I really don't dig it. It just looks like cheer dance to me. It's not like no." And she said, "No, I think you really like it. It's really true." And I thought to myself, "Okay, she's a scholarship student. It'll be good for her to sign them up. Get the." I said, "Okay, here's the criteria. I only want the very best teachers because
There you go.
if you have the best teachers, it's going to bring people in." Also,
Absolutely.
at that time, Little Havana was not integrated in that way. There are Afro-Cubans here, but it was not integrated with Southern blacks in any way, shape, or form. And
Right.
part of the mission statement of the studio is it's two tenets. One is based on Charles Eisenstein's philosophy of sacred economics, so that the monetary doesn't lead. And that's just a little brief thing of it. You can follow it through if you're interested. And
All right.
the other tenet is intentional diversity, because I think you have to intend it, but you have to find the organic way. So I
Yeah.
thought to myself, all right, let this kid do her best. It'll be good for her, and we'll see what it is. If it's good, it's good. So she set it up. She brought in the teachers. The first class was, I saw the kids filing in. I'm looking at them from my office. I'm like, okay, the music is going. Halfway through, I think to myself, let me go have a look. I'm telling you, I go in, I was like,
I know.
what
I
am I?
know. What I
What,
saw there was incredible. I know. I'm still
and
in awe from
I
that time.
listen, I'm a contemporary choreographer. That's what I was doing here and opening the studio for the reasons I just said to you. But I had to leave the room, stand in my office. I was holding my head saying, what just happened to me? What am I going to do with this? Because the thing is, if something is, I'm an artist. I don't care what it is. I was like, these kids are freaking amazing. What am I going to do?
Amazing.
So then, the boom, shot off. I created this gigantic, and the only thing that brought it down, that end of my urban dance stuff, was So You Think You Can Dance, America's Best Dance Crew, and America's Got Talent. That came through here. Well, I'm going to say what my mother would say, and you'll pardon me. That came through here like a big ass bird,
I
and
know.
took that out, cousin against cousin, like it
Crazy.
destroyed what we were building here. Because I kept saying, I brought them to New York. I was like, stay together. Look, if something, even though it's against all odds, when something is this good, it's going to be irresistible with somebody with money. Stay together.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the other story. In the meantime, this is a very long-winded. In the meantime,
And you say you didn't know that you didn't have much to talk about. You see?
I do if you ask me. I just can't talk, and I'm not good about myself.
You're very good. You are a very good storyteller, let me tell you.
Okay. So anyway, and I listen to spirit. Like I go by instinct.
There you go.
What have I got to lose? I don't have any money. I'm not famous. I could care less. Life is for living. Let's go. So right.
Same thing.
Meanwhile, a guy comes through the door. He looked like the stereotypic criminal. And when he walks through the door, I'm sitting there, and Spirit said to me, whatever this guy says to you, you say yes. I was like, okay. So this guy who looks all the world like a thug, he's the most soft-spoken, beautiful creature. So he said to me, look, I want to have a program for the children of the origination of hip hop. So I said, okay, now we're talking. And he said the original tenets as laid down by Bambaataa, peace, love, unity, right living, and having fun. And I said, yes. And he said, yes? I said, yes, we'll do it. So from there on in, that's what happened. So, and I have pictures of me in Africa. My body was here. And so for me, it's based on each one, teach one, and just having the originations of an extraordinarily important American art form here, because we are protectors of vernacular work, because what comes from the people comes from direct from spirit, comes
Yeah.
direct from need, is a direct
Yeah.
voice to our times, to how we're living. If it is not led by money, I don't care if money comes in later, but if it's not led by money, okay. So we had that here for like 17 years. And we added to it ballet, and we added tap, and I had a music course for a while, which was a lot of fun. um, and then came with the urban program, and then the tree school program came the cruise. So we had everybody here, the Flipside Kings, and like one guy came from Central America at some point, knocks on the door. I open the door and he says Lego. That was the full extent of his English was to say Lego, who's a terrific breakdancer he's a member of the Flipside Kings and an originator here in Miami. I was like, okay, come on in. So he worked here. We had jokers uh, from down south, all the Heartbreakers, the female breakdancing crew. They had no place to rehearse. They were here. Um, so that was just this big, long thing.
And when I love that it was in the middle of Little Havana. I
Yes,
love it. I
that's
love
right.
it. Love it, love
Right.
it. And let's talk a little bit about Sixth Street Dance Studio, your studio. Apart from that, through school.
Right.
What is it for you? What have you done there? Because it's such a funky, beautiful place. I love it.
It is a funky place. Well, like I say, I came this studio. What a friend of mine directed it. A friend of mine from New York. Beautiful girl I went to school with from Harlem. Beautiful dancer. She was one of the first people to combine actually hip hop with contemporary dance, and she's still working. So when she took the space, when she first had the space, then I was here as a teacher, but she had health issues, so she had to move, and she said, do you want it? So I said, okay, because there was I really didn't intend to stay here. I was supposed to be teaching in a choreographic center in Spain, starting a new choreographic center in Spain, but it was taking a very long time. So I was here because rent was cheap and I had places to work while I was waiting. So I said yes, and then that thing fell through, and I had this because I learned a long time ago, in attending a lot of the different forums on gender bias in the arts, the statistics for female choreographers, and I'm not just a female choreographer, I'm an outlier. I do odd work and whatever. I mean, I guess when women are really telling the truth, they're all doing odd work for the status quo, you know. So the statistics are outlandish. It's like if you are a female choreographer and you do not have a space, there's something like a 95% chance your work will never be seen. I was like, what? And other statistics that were like startling. So I thought, take the space, So it was just intended I had already been teaching ballet here and modern in different places. So it was really just a place to ground my choreographic work and to teach dancers. But because of my background and the kind of person that I am, community that's what I learned as a child, and that we belong to one another, that it's an inclusive thing, and the community is really important to me. So then began all of that. So I have always I've made, the thing is to adapt. If you are involved in an ecology, like the landscape is changing around you and the needs of the people are changing, then for me is extremely important to continue to change curriculum and change what you offer and invite in and move and flow. And especially in a place like Miami where New York is built on basalt. It's very,
Yeah.
linear, strong. This is on the water. It's like coming in, going out, and
And something that I remember you mentioned one to me when I spoke to you before is that you, in a way, the Miami that you are living remind you something from New York of the
yeah,
70s or 80s. Was
yeah.
that?
The reason that was exciting to me was because of the genuine uh, lived culture that is here and the diversity of culture and things that you can see the carryovers of culture still are sustained with a dignity, and they're also, I love Little Havana, living
Yeah.
here, everything is reasonable, the food is good, the people are
Yes.
genuine, like it's a thing. If my truck breaks down,
You know somebody's gonna help you.
yeah, but like not only do 16 people offer to help, 16 people actually can fix it. So, I mean, the skills from the mind to life are still intact. And music comes from windows like life, real life, not life that's corporatized or globalized, is something that you genuinely feel. And you feel it in all these different pockets of Miami. To me, is extremely important to, and there is the highbrow here as there was in New York. I could have 14 cents in my pocket and put on a dress and wander up to the Met Museum and go in and look at things.
Yeah.
Meaning if that belonged to me, and
Yeah.
that's also important for me here to show that art belongs to everyone.
Exactly.
When the children would come in the room, or anyone comes in the room, they're not coming to a blank room, but they're coming to a room full of art and the expectation of art in one's life. So I got mixed in with community as I would.
Yeah.
And then began like 6 jillion different kinds of programs. I had dinner and a movie here. We do wall raptures. There were, I don't know, there were like so many different groups, kids that were working on their kind of choreographies here. We did the hair show. I brought young people to New York to the Phase on Firehouse to try to make a joint relationship between New York, the Apollo, Phase on Firehouse, and here. I went to Overtown and was teaching there. I taught at the Haitian Women's Center for the children there. So there was this kind of mix up. And then the whole time I was doing my choreographic work as well and developing a company. We had theater companies here that this was their home. This is sort of a go-to, reasonably rated place where you can rent. Now we are, again, it's very important to me to protect vernacular work, anything that's coming up, anything that's emerging, and also very classic. I want all of these things to be next to each other because that's where they belong.
Exactly. I
So
love that you're mentioning that because I think one of the things that is important, I think in your work, that for me transpire is the multidisciplinary vision
yeah,
that you have. You consider arts as one,
yeah, good. Duke
all
Ellington.
of them.
Somebody said to Duke Ellington, I've forgotten who, said, how do I know if this is good? And he said, well, if it sounds good, it is good. The criteria for that is this whole other organization, which I find in nature. There's this perfection there. And of course, it's based on practice and study. That's the human way, man. Practice, study. You'll figure it out. And apply your hands to it. I think that these are the kind of things that happen. And then, we got a couple of night arts challenges for one for True School and the other for a homegrown program, which was mixing all different kinds of dancers together in one room. First studying light body, which is this thing that I created. It's a kind of unified breathing and movement that is for the nervous system, to put that together to see
It
what.
makes so much sense what I read about it. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and it's really works, you know. And one of the other ones we did between, this was very exciting, between New York and Detroit, because I love Detroit, and Detroit was like falling into a huge hole, and so I thought to myself, what can I do for Detroit?
Yeah.
So I looked up, and there was this guy um, uh, who had created a group called Hardcore um, Detroit. They call him Strings. His name is Halim Razul. And this group, Hardcore Detroit, was about the mission of preserving one of the Detroit vernacular works called the JIT. And he did this biographical movie of it. He was just a really committed artist. So I called him. I said, "You don't know me, but I really think I love what you're doing." And I proposed to him this idea of what if we put the Jitters from Detroit together with several different of the crews of the urban dance crews in Miami, and what if we do a real-time freestyle with Internet 2 technology at New World Symphony? And what if we bring in the Symphony Fellows and the Wayne State University in Detroit? What about their musicians? And if we try to use like real-time freestyling, both cities, screen time, publicized
Yes.
real musicians and recorded music in both cities, what would happen? Because no one had ever really done that way before.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
there's that, we all know from Zoom now classes that there's a delay, but Internet 2 technology at the New World Symphony is very advancing and advancing. So we just did that, and that was like bringing highbrow,
Cool.
lowbrow, all this different kinds of things together in one exploration of fun, and that was really great. So
Let me ask you another thing that I think is really important, and I think you have it incorporated in your work, and it has to do with the state of affairs in the cultural local scenes when it comes to racism, when it comes to the African diaspora.
mhm.
I personally believe we need to have conversations,
Yes,
all kinds, but we need to have conversations within organizations
yeah,
in which we openly talk about these issues, because
yes,
this is not an external event. This is
yes,
something that comes from within,
right,
from families, group of people, such, etc.
right.
um, how do you see this? What is your take on regards to what can we do to make it better, to contribute to make it a better place for all of us?
Well, you have to listen first of all, and I think that's first of all and second of all. And I think that you have to um, present to the community something that is welcome and that is entirely whatever that community is. So if I'm inviting, and I'm talking about like with the urban dance community, there was all these kind of segregations. It's less and less, which is good. Like the whackers, the gay, um, and queer identified, non-binary, all of those dancers, they were all together in one group. The breakers, believe it or not, down here were almost primarily Latin. Then the hip hop, as it were, more traditional hip hop was more mixed, but um, still these separateness.
Yeah, we live very segregated, one from each
Right,
other here.
right. And that was different from me, from my background, and also from the way that we lived out of New York. It was very, very different. My family's mixed, and that
Yeah.
was different, but something that I had to really accept. The other thing is that my company, um, I, I've like begged black dancers to come and dance with me, and what can I say? They don't, they're not interested
Yeah, I
in my
know. It
work.
happens too the other way around. I
The other way
know.
around. And so for a couple of years, I had no black dancers in my company at all. And I used to laugh and say, this is not representative of my perspective on the world. I don't know what else to do.
We need to develop relationships among ourselves so we trust each other, you know? We don't know each other, I think.
Right. And the other thing is, I think that that's different from New York is that in the contemporary and classical, and from where I come from my age group, I'm 63. So I do work that comes out of maybe the Cunningham filter, more abstracted work. Although I do narrative work as well. I've used no music. This was much more open field for Blacks and Latins in New York than it is here. I noticed in their training, they're really, really trained. And I was a Graham trained dancer as well. So I have all of that. But the kids here in their classic training are trained really in a Graham perspective, which when they seek to do professional work, they seek to go on specific tracks, whether it's to Ailey, if they're going to New York for the bigger companies, Ailey or Graham, or they're working out of that. And also, it's a time now where I'm like white, so I'm like, shut up, like let it happen. I really am. I'm like, I don't have an opinion. I'm just, and I'm going to tell you a story of what I learned, the biggest thing I ever learned about soul wounds and what it actually is. When I lived in the mountains for some time, and I don't know if you remember, but there were during Ceausescu in Romania, there was a moment where there were these orphans who were completely abandoned and left, hundreds and hundreds of them, neglected, never held, never, infants and babies. So in the mountains, a couple there adopted an infant. She was maybe 6 months old, but hadn't been held and whatever. So at one point in time, they said to me, can you come and babysit? We need a night out. And I said, sure, no problem. So I go with the infant, and I'm holding the infant, and the infant began to cry. But I am telling you, cry, and I come from a huge family, cry in a way that I was like, what is happening here? So of course, what do? You call your mother. So I say, Mom, this baby, and she knew the story behind the baby, and she said, okay, listen to me. You're going to take that baby and you're going to swaddle that baby tight, good and tight. Is there a rocking chair there? And I said, yes. And she said, you're going to sit with that baby and you're going to rock with that baby. And you're not going to try to stop that baby. You're only going to hold and contain that baby. And you rock her, and you should feel privileged that this baby has chosen this moment to tell her story to you about her pain.
She was great.
Yeah, so I just...
What a great advice.
Exactly. So the way that I look at the soul murdering wound of racism that we live with, if you call that living, is that I am simply that person who hopes to, and makes me cry, swallow that baby and contain it, because so that's what I mean, like, shut up. Whatever separatist things has to happen, I'll support in whatever way I can, but mostly I'm not going to add my 2 cents to anything. It's a listening time and an absolute consoling time. Let that happen. I don't care what kind of crazy harebrained thing anyone says. I don't care how mad they are. I don't care how what their reactions are.
We need to understand. We need to understand each other. You know, we need to listen. I really love it because I'm a very spiritual person too, and the message that I'm getting from this time is listen. And I'm transmitting that to my friends that are whiter than me. We need to listen to the actors that we always took for granted, and we never listen, because the problem, I think, is that we think Black voices are not regarded as equals.
Right.
We think that there has to be a structure in which we present people, but we don't let them be who they are.
Right. We haven't a clue. So I think it is a time of shut up and offer the most consoling, compassionate heart that you can possibly muster.
Compassion. So how do we develop compassion for people who don't have a clue? about it and that they don't know where to start, what would you say to people like that?
Service. The first thing that you do is you volunteer somewhere. And that was the very first thing that my parents had us do was volunteer service from the earliest age possible. Because then you begin to have, and you form relationships. I mean, it's to create that empathy gene, you have
Yeah.
to volunteer and be a part of service to something. And because we're learning it now, we will learn because the whole dang thing has fallen down. Thank God.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank
it's
God.
going to be scary
We
years.
are deconstructing the narrative, our
Yes,
originated narratives, colonial ones,
colonial. That's exactly
hierarchical ones,
right.
that divide us in terms of cultures,
Right.
origins,
Right.
gender, sexualities.
Right.
That's it. We are sick and tired of all these divisions, aren't we?
Well, they're imposed, and
Totally.
they're not an
Not natural.
not natural and not an aspect of life on earth. They really aren't. Until like the last piece, or not the last piece, but the piece before that I did was um, on. I always, not always, but have been using nature as this teacher in the work, and this time we were under the sea with these very strange octopus and strange things that we don't think is cuddly or whatever, but they're metaphors for this otherness and our reaction to anything, to the separation, to the whole deal. And I was like, whatever happened to wonder and welcome at something that is different? So I really,
Exactly.
you
I
know,
think we have watched too many movies in which we chart the ones that are coming that are different from us, that
yeah,
we're so used to. I
yeah,
don't know, I'm just, being silly, but in a way it's kind of that reaction,
yeah, actually,
not welcoming the other.
yes, I think it begins with welcome and wonder, and then if it moves next, if we are fortunate, to inclusion, and then it moves next to belonging, and belonging is everything.
And access, I think it's very important to
Yeah.
provide access, opportunities, and
Yes,
information.
right.
Because that's the game. The game is based on levels of access to information.
Yes, that's right. No, completely. I'm telling you, coming out of um, a poor household, um, the whole thing had to do with, my family. They were wonderful, and I had another thing. I mean, everything changes you, doesn't it? I had a sister who was terminally ill, and
Mm.
my sister closest in age. And I think then you spend this time, your early life, around, on the terminally ill children's ward. You learn a great deal about life this way because
Mm.
you because there are children, like, they're dying on the daily, and you realize, wow, this is a part of life. It isn't this like fantasy thing. This
Exactly.
happen. Things happen in when you're a human. And also that, people say tomorrow is not promised to you. Well, it isn't, but you also see that to really live. So this had a big effect on me, but also the fact that we had no money at all. If I wanted to do anything, then it was a matter of um, getting a scholarship and
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
And I watched the shaming of the correlation between money and worth, and this was just so despicable to me. When we talk about access, that I just, in every chance that I get, I try to deconstruct that shaming process and say, it's freaking money. It shouldn't be leading anyway. That shouldn't determine what you have access to, and
Exactly.
or the best of
Or who
something.
should be supported? Because, for example, I see that Miami, as you have said, is
Yeah,
such a vibrant city. It has so much culture, so much
yeah,
going on beyond the institutions. way beyond. The institutions are really trying to catch up or not. But Miami is an explosion of cultures, an explosion of talent. And I really would like to see how we can all contribute to tap into that amazing talent that we all have here.
And I learned from my father, I am in constant letter writing, phone calling battle with one institution or another. I am absolutely the burr in the saddle. I've just spent 3 days fighting over all this stuff, that I know this money is being allocated in all these different directions. If you do not have a grant relationship, then I do not have access to this federal funding. And that just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
For instance, and again, dealing with um, being of a low income, sustainable is sustainable. I mean, the first thing I did when I took the studio was get rid of the debt. It's the very first thing I did. I am not grant reliant. I will take grants that are for a specific project to help that. And even those are matching funds. So I have to raise an enormous amount of money on my own. That's another story. Which is what? I was like, why do we have a matching fund? And they're like for incentive. I was like, I don't need any incentive to do
exactly.
You follow me around for a few days.
They're changing that, I think.
That's it. And so what we did was I got annoyed with one huge grant thing here. And so I started cold calling organizations that I knew were worthy here who don't think they know how to get the money or write for the thing. I taught myself, and because my mother's tenants were like, she had a series of things she would say that answered everything. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Read the book. I don't know. She had a million of them, but so figure it out and read a book were two of the major ones. So I figured it out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I called these people. We made an admin table here to help them write for these grants, and every single one of them won those grants.
There you go.
I said to this one guy, I was like, you have been running this place by yourself for 25 years, 27 years. Okay, here's this, I'll tell you a little something. So this guy, I used to ask the kids, like, whether they were in hip hop or coming in for ballet or whatever. There was a certain kind of kid who was really committed and really good. And I obviously had some training somewhere. So I'd say to them, where did you study? And this guy's name would come up. And it was over and over and over again for the kid. And I'd say to all the class openly, I was like, this guy doesn't know it, but I'm like his biggest champ. So I called him and I said, come in, let's do this. And we laughed our heads in and we wrote this thing and a whole bunch of different groups and we got them money. But it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be that way. It has to be sustainable. I'm so happy that you're mentioning that word. You took it out of my mind because that was what I was thinking. Because I don't understand, for example, a person like you are an institution. Why are you having to have so many challenges in these current times?
Right.
Can somebody be knocking at your door saying, hey, we know that you are in trouble. Let me help you.
Yeah. So
we don't have that.
No. And I have to fight for it. The latest thing, I'm relegated to the dreaded Group B, which all of us in Group B, we laugh about. But I mean, because I was born in a Group B.
I'm starting, so wish me good luck.
Exactly.
I'm starting this year. So applying to grants and stuff like that. But I had to do it too.
I know. Well, now after this last 3 days, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm gonna see where I'm guided. I'm gonna see what else. I'm just not. It gets less and less instead of more.
Yeah. I'm thinking, there has to be something related for me with the promotion of the legacy and vibrancy of the African diaspora, but in particular, the Caribbean aspect of it. Yes. We forget. And that's another thing that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Miami, the Caribbean aspect of Miami is not highlighted enough. We have the privilege of having so many communities of Caribbean people that have so much rich culture background.
Right.
And we don't have a conversation or an invitation, I think, in all cases, as equals to the tables.
the question of equality at the table, it's the last sentence I just wrote to these people. I said it would be so good to have a proper seat at the table, and I'm white, you know, but even if you align yourself through your principles of things they deem to be, because it's monetized. So in other words, I say to them, I have maintained a brick and mortar space for 20 years without any grant support. That to me is sustainable. If
Absolutely.
I mean, you go to Publix, you buy macaroni and cheese, you give them the money, you take the macaroni and cheese home. How is that not sensible to you? To me, it's very simple. You pay for the thing, you get the thing. And if I wasn't sustainable, meaning ecologically sustainable, then nobody would be coming through the door to pay for classes or to pay for whatever. It's the people that pay for it. And through whatever negotiations we can do, through my landlords, negotiating with them, they see a different value. So my rent isn't outlandish. But I mean, it's still Miami rent, whatever. So
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about the Caribbean, we are talking about all people who are primarily black and brown, aren't we? For wherever their home origin is, we're talking
Yeah.
about this basic thing, and then we're talking about queer and non-binary and LGBTQ. We're talking about all of that. Thankfully, this big explosion is the inclusive explosion. So I think we're going to sit in a hot mess for a while. But the
Yeah.
beauty is it's coming out, you know.
It's a beautiful moment, spiritually speaking, right? It's a moment that is amazing. It has so much potential.
Spiritually speaking, it really does. And now we're scrambling to find the ways to practically approach it. And you take it one thing at a time. To backtrack to your
Exactly.
original question, what do you do? What can you do?
Yeah.
So let's say this thing comes up. There's federal money coming out during this. Hello, it's a pandemic, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So this thing is coming up. They get federal money. Then you have to immediately, what can you do? You got to watchdog and see where are the allocations? Where is this? And then you have to begin to say, and it's not, I keep saying to them, I am not trying to polarize this situation.
Yeah.
It should be exciting to know, first of all, that I'm not the only organization who is set up in a way that is contrary to the existing systemic situation. There
Yeah.
are many groups globally. There are these huge movements.
Exactly. Not everybody can operate the same way and be the same. You have to be adapted to different kinds of organizations or
Absolutely.
projects, creative spaces, whatever that is.
Right. And the other thing is, we, even in farming, because we have lacked the diversity of methodology and the diversity, we're losing our seeds, all of those things, that springs from globalization, from corporatization, from this, we're losing it. We need variety. We need it. I mean, I even wrote a proposal. I was like, this is what my proposal is. I want to create a group called the League of Radical Advisors. And
Yes.
I want people from all different kinds of things
Yes.
say what they think. I want my car mechanic to be on it, to say what he has. I want abuelas to be on it, people who have lived lives in different points of view, to look at large corporate things and say, you know, one of the crazy jobs I had in New York, I was a troubleshooter for businesses.
Nice.
I had absolutely no background in this when it started.
It's kind of being a strategist, right? A problem solving.
Yes. And a family of 10, one is terminally ill, in an amazing kind of place. You get a brain or you sink. And plus, I love systems. So I started like in a restaurant saying like, you know what you should do? You should do da-da-da. You know, if you did this, that would be really great, you know? And so one thing led to another, and this guy started hiring me out, and then they liked what I did, and this guy, next thing you know, I'm in like 42nd Street in this huge building. I'm looking up to go, you know, do troubleshooting for this corporation. I thought, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I'm gonna die. I gotta get out of here. How did this happen? But I mean, it paid the bills for a while. I also worked for an invention company. They would send me inventions and I would make sense of the
That's
invention.
cool.
I loved it. It was like calms me down. So I did it.
Yeah,
But
I understand that. I was a diplomat and I was
yeah,
negotiator of
okay.
the budget of the United Nations and all the peacekeeping operations budget and the human resources policy. So,
Yeah,
it's kind of that mentality of you have to oversight, you
yeah,
have to, analyze, assess with
yeah.
detail the resources allocation and the
It,
justification. That was crazy.
it's a crazy thing. Well,
Crazy good.
we make a good team, I think.
I think so,
Over the
really.
world, So the point is that the League of Radical Advisors came out of that. I was like, you need fresh eyes. So
Yes.
in everything that I write to them, I've written again to these large grant organizations when I knew that all these deserving people, and I don't know a third of them. There are so many in Miami. It's amazing.
Exactly. We don't know that we have to recognize that we don't know much of the talent that is
Yeah,
here that should be supported
correct.
some
So,
way. And
I
they
have
don't know where to go either.
that's the thing, and it's there's a hierarchy. There's a you don't know, you don't get,
Exactly.
you're not on the list, you're
Based on
not,
that, based on access.
and elitism, and
I
that's
know.
that's
And that is really, it's unfortunate.
right.
And really, this is not what the city needs.
Yes, and the other, I mean,
Honestly.
the advantage to that is that I am white, and I do have a big mouth, and I'm not stupid. Meaning I can take my lumps. So I will go in, and so there's something you can do. If you haven't
Yeah.
been through it, then there's something you can do. So I just feel like the time has come. Oh, in writing these other ones, one of my dancers, and who's amazing, her whole big thing, her project was to document everything that is here and to create a whole new kind of Venn diagram and to show the value. And this would be so invaluable for how money gets allocated on a national level,
Exactly.
arts and culture. Like the diagrams and data, it's the data and the metrics, like what they
I
use.
know, and value cannot be allocated based on data because data is so much manipulated.
I know.
People
And
don't understand. So many people base their analysis and projections on data. They never question how
right,
this data was constructed, where this data comes from.
right. So what they don't like about us is that I'm always saying, this data came from here, and this, and I'm saying, why can't it be exciting that that's pointed out? Why does it have to be?
Exactly. Feedback. Democracy, I think, is based on feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, but the other thing is, if you're representing arts and culture, whether as a person who's participating in it or a person who's overseeing and trying to help, aren't we all on the same damn team? Like, don't you want that to happen? I do. I'm excited. The distressing part of being in Miami for me, when I first got here with my New York brain set, I looked to the left, I looked to the right. I thought, this place is full of talent, even like amazing, and opportunity. It's amazing. I thought, this is going to be simple. Well, no, because the systems are so embedded and so unwilling to change. Even
So unwilling to change.
and
That's my problem. And change is not bad. Change is good. It's necessary.
yeah,
Change is what makes New York what it is.
I
Because
know.
what is New York? Change, speed, all the time,
Right.
potential. They just energy flows because you make it flow. I think what makes New York, and I wanted to ask you about it. I think New York is kind of an spiritual experience or something that stays with you. You take
Oh,
wherever you go
mm-hmm.
because it provides like a need for curiosity and
Oh, yeah.
trying to immerse in whatever is going on, right? And to really relate with things, not the superficial way.
No, it's a very direct mindset. My parents are both New Yorkers, and I was born in the country in upstate New York,
Mm.
which is pretty hilarious because I don't know if you know the old show Green Acres, where Zsa Zsa Gabor has moved to the she's
Suburbs.
she's moved to the mountains or the country somewhere. And my mother was like, darling, I love it, but give me Park Avenue. She was, it's like, And my father all dressed.
Where is Park Avenue?
Exactly, my father all dressed up in this country, with his mind. It was crazy. So I had the best of their extraordinary love of living things and their New York mind. So we were, all of us in New York by the time I was a teenager. The headset in New York, and that's my New York. Now New York has been co-opted by a million things.
Yeah,
No,
I
it's
know.
not sensible. It's not New York anymore. But
No, it's
you
not.
internalize it, as you say. You internalize it, and it's a very direct place. And when I came here and started saying, I'd go directly up to someone and say, "Come," and then it was like, ah.
Offense. Offense. I'm like, really? Be who you are is an offense?
I don't, it's
What
not.
is wrong with be who am I?
Yeah,
Who makes the rules here?
the other thing is, it's not personally directed. It's directed at.
Very impersonal. Very impersonal.
About a system, it's about a thing, it's about, we're talking about this issue, that, New Yorkers are talking about this, how to get it better done, how to, use your mind. It has the whole, it's has a greater sense of equality. It's because people were, at least at that time, mixed together, and highbrow and lowbrow were mixed together, and you had really divergent um, neighborhoods next to each other. There were different kinds of opportunities. And, when I think about in the 70s or the early 80s, late 70s, Soho was this abandoned, there was like.
I know. It was such
Talent.
a different place to what it is now, right?
Yeah. We used to, and all those abandoned warehouses from that, when they destroy another.
Hey, Williamsburg. Can you recognize Williamsburg now?
No, I can't.
It's a different place.
I mean, I got a loft on West Broadway in Canal. We would just look up the owner in the yellow pages, and we'd call him up, Mr. Hertzkovitz. So, rent your space, and he just owned it outright, was only paying taxes. He's like, sure.
Wow.
So you give him cash, he gave you the key, and good luck, and the whole city was developed that way. But I mean, not to mention it was stuck in a depression because they took all the jobs. They left the black and the brown people in the Bronx and the North, and took those jobs out to Long Island or whatever, and the white people with them. And that's the cause of the big cave in New York City. But it was basically the young people that rebuilt it. There wasn't even a real fashion scene per se. Of course, they always sold fashion on the Avenue, but there wasn't this created art, fashion, music, all of this stuff was created by, and I was in my 20s, for crying out loud,
But one thing that New York knows how to do is to celebrate cultures.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know now, but
I don't know now, but like it's at my time, I remember that, and I think that is something that I would like here to see on the regular, that we celebrate each other existence.
Yes.
Contributions, because we all have to learn from each other,
God, when I think about things like disco, let's say, in New York.
Oh my God.
Because here's the deal. So you have the Cubans and Puerto Ricans coming up to the Bronx during the big band era.
Yeah, Afro-Cuban jazz emerged in the 40s in the Bronx.
So what you have is, first they're playing in the big bands, but they have all of their roots, and they're taking that with them. But people went to the different boroughs. Yeah. So every borough had a different beat, different disco beat. And that is because it sprang from whatever island nation that came from.
Yeah.
Wandered down through the big band era, kept its roots, and reorganized itself. And disco was amazing. We only think of the crap that was on.
I know, disco is incredible.
But it was really incredible. And it's salsa and all the other varieties.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, they're so related.
With the backup singers from the Brill Building and from Motown, because that was kind of closing down. All those backup singers came, and they either frontlined for the disco or sang backup. So you have all of that influence from Detroit, which is American black that had moved from the South up to New York. I mean, we have to, if, oh, what happened? Like, this country is immigrants. We
I
should be
know.
capitalizing on that. I don't
I
understand.
know.
To
I
me,
know. It's sad. It's really sad. It's a hypocrisy.
I'm telling you this. Even if I was the worst racist on two legs with a bun, it doesn't make economic sense.
I know.
Like, I say to other people, I was like, so you don't like us? Let me appeal to your pocketbook. Like, this to me, but because the corporate interests were able to completely monopolize, you can't make that argument anymore. You can't make that argument anymore. But everything's falling down now, so maybe you may make it.
Maybe we start thinking in a different way. Maybe
Yeah,
we start experiencing, feeling more.
feeling.
Feeling. I think we need to really talk from the place of our hearts, all
Right.
of us.
I mean, could Spirit have devised a better virus than the one we're currently in? The one that keeps people from each other? I'm like, maybe we might begin, because a lack of cohesion is like a really, the bottom
How do
line.
you see it moving forward? How do you see it moving forward? Like the dance, the arts world?
You know,
How do you?
people are asking me that in the pandemic. Like, a lot of the arts reviewers, they call me like, so what's your project? What are you doing? And I was like, okay, I've created this full body protocol because I am concerned that we're crazy. So
Yeah.
after AIDS in New York, I had a huge spiritual awakening because I lost like everybody and my whole community.
And New York makes you feel the stress to the core too. That's the thing
But
with New
also,
York.
all of the visionaries and outliers and their points of view that were being grounded were lost in one fell swoop. Boom. So I had an awakening. I went to the mountains, and that's when I began to study all these other practices and really study them,
Nice.
breath work and craniosacral as a
Yes.
network spinal analysis, all these different kinds of things.
Yes.
So,
That makes perfect sense to me.
right. So what I dedicate my movement is built off of this now, and I create something for through breath work to try to connect the right and left hemisphere of the brain, to try to improve on the integrity of the nervous system, to create new neural pathways, to open up blocked ones.
Yes.
We have to begin with the whole body being to be receptive.
Yes.
So when this pandemic happened and people wanted to know about my next project or how I'm going to pay for anything, I don't know that. But I knew that, oh, I have to make a whole new avenue of the body protocols to address the fear body and address the new information that's right behind it. So I spend, 6 hours a day just crafting that through this fascial opening work and breath work and sound emanations.
Nice.
Add to what we've already done, which has to do with fascial connectivity. And then the rest of the time, I have to Zoom teach or what's the thing? Paperwork like this to keep us open. Like the paperwork, as I say, I did 28 submissions in 2019, which is an enormous amount of submissions.
Wow.
But I've done 30 in 4 months' time. I'll tell you what I did. I was halfway through one and I said to myself, wait a minute, I think I did this already. And I had done it already. Like your brain.
Yeah, it's not normal.
So to answer long-windedly, to answer the moving forward part has to do with addressing the body spirit being. That's where I go first, because it doesn't matter what you do out here. If you don't address that first, you're gonna fall in a big hole and be all worried. So we have to reorganize fear, and we have to revivify hope through actual physical practices that help to enable and support that.
And I would say intentional empathy. I don't know if that exists, but I would say that we need to believe exploring what is it? What is that empathy that people talk about?
Yeah.
What is it? How do we do it? Because it's important. We are human beings.
I love that intentional empathy. I love that. It's a great idea. And you can make a whole process under that. Okay, so what would that look like? Then it would be service in begin here, begin in these three places offering service. You know,
Like part of a like a routine that you
yes,
incorporate to your life, and then it
right,
becomes, you know, a practice that becomes a routine.
right. A practice that becomes a routine, right, or a ritual. You know,
Exactly.
uh, so it has a consciousness to it. You know, so I don't know. Going forward is that, and then seeing what happens. My dancers are like super sensitive,
I
and
love your dancers.
thank you.
I wrote a piece about this. You did something with Leonie or Leonie, in which you participate, right? I love it. I wrote a piece about it. I really love it. Plaza, it was called. Remember
Yes,
at
yes.
the produce place?
At his dad's fruit
I
place.
love that. I love that.
Thank
And then tell me, and this is the last question.
you. Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about aesthetics. I would love to
Oh,
you to tell me a little bit of um, your style. I know I can see from your work that you place an emphasis in the whole process.
I do.
The visuality is very important to you of the movement, the geometry,
Yes,
right?
all of that. Yeah.
And I love that. Tell me a little bit about it.
There's also a whole elevation of women's art. So women were, of course, not permitted to do anything. Um,
Hmm.
and so even the art they made, they had to name it something else. So they called it craft. And right, it's so freaking true. So I
Makes sense.
elevate that. Yes, I elevate that. And
Naming is so important. Have
well,
you noticed how much
Mal
we operate based on namings?
exactly in Malcolm X, that's the first thing they do. You know, they give you the slave master's name. They take an area like Little Havana. They wanted to call it West Brickell.
I know. I used to live there. I was one of the ones who came after the gentrification. I lost my house there.
Yeah, I lost mine in Buena Vista. So um,
I'm close by Buena Vista.
this is my eighth space of being gentrified after
That's
starting.
another conversation.
I know.
Rent in Miami.
This started. My gentrification story started in Tribeca.
Oh my God. So you come all the
So,
way.
right, Soho to Tribeca to the East
It's
Village.
your karma, right? It's kind of your karma.
I'm telling you, my poor landlords, when they came upon me and said hello the first day, I felt like Betty Davis on this step with a big gun saying, "Get off my property." I was like, "You don't know who you're talking to." I said to them, "I don't care what you do, I'm staying. You're going to have to blow me out of here." Because I just decided that's the end of it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Somebody has to do it.
somebody has to do it. So in aesthetic, things that I've built were built also by community. Like if you come in to talk to me, I have this big net that I built. Then you have to tie knots on it as well. So it's many hands, like a quilting bee. I feel like this handwork very important to have handwork. And to me, I'll leave other people for making a design and having a bunch of people build it. I build it with the other people around me, or I build it. But it's very important for the spiritual aspect of it to speak into the work. And that is really feminine in nature. I mean, I'm gonna take out a little tour. Like I preserve
Nice.
all of this crazy needlepoint stuff.
Yes.
My dog.
Yes.
Um, this heart, you can see her little pieces of her made by hand.
I love that.
Um, and I use the simplest materials. I can show you here. I don't know if you can see it because I can't
Yes.
now. Up here,
Okay.
like
Cool.
that's woman's dress and a tree root. So I'll use like paper mache and
I love it.
and they're mobile. And these chains I made from like cardboard to
Cool.
wrap a building, you know. And I
Yes.
also use very significant women things, clothespins, safety pins, things that are, a lot of stuff is held together with tape. And the most organic materials I can find,
Oh,
whatever is commonplace, because I think I'm interested in that which is overlooked. I'm
yeah.
interested in the weaving that people do. Also, my mom was a designer and a wonderful designer, and then also out of necessity, but we didn't know it was necessity because she was so good at it. I mean, she
You
made.
know, a lot of women are doing that, like a kind of a quill, but economically speaking, like economics of solidarity.
Mhm.
People put some money and then they circulate it and then, they grow it and some of them take it. The
Yes,
same idea. It's based on the same principle.
absolutely. So my mom used to, she made everything, all of our clothes. She made everything in the house. She, my father was the writer, like he did all that, but she was the hammer and nail person and could sew anything. So I learned all of that from her, the ability to sew. So I make the costumes and there's just something so important and so preserving of women and the feminine sensibility in this idea of these materials going into a kind of utilitarian beauty. And also, I'm not making it to hang on a wall so things will fall off. And
Yeah.
like in terms of the
You
external.
live with them, right? They're part of your environment, your right
Yeah, yeah,
context. Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like that kind of weaving is extremely important. So the aesthetic is that, and also I'm very influenced by the spiritualist painters like Agnes Martin and Agnes Pelton and Hilma af Klint and these people who are really using sacred geometry. I use it in all of the formations of my work. You know, I was also trained by a lot of my teachers were Asian,
There
Japanese,
you go.
and I learned a lot from them
There's
relative.
so much to learn from that.
It's a kind of formalism and editing, and also because I'm a person who likes to use a lot of things, so to combine the aesthetic of formalism really edited with an enormous amount of things going on, to me is
Yeah.
and I think it's feminine because we are not.
And it's necessary. I think we need to violate our boundaries in a way and,
Yes,
explode them. Like, see what
yes,
happens.
right, right.
Get rid of all of it and see what happens when we really start,
To mine it, to mine it.
each other, like
Yeah.
getting into each other worlds,
Mhm.
views, whatever,
Right,
experiences. We need
right,
that. We cannot be just so much contained anymore in our
right,
own artificial worlds.
right. No, I agree. I really agree. And also, I feel like to, the experience of the silence of women in their knowingness. Like, I'm reminded of a little experience of someone broke into the studio for like the millionth time, and we were
Wow.
going to New York, a bunch of us, and there were three women standing there, and there was one guy putting the lock on, and three women were standing there like this, and we're all talking, telepathically, like this guy, like it's taking too long, and he's putting it on upside down. All the women internalize that and know that, and then like we always know what's going on, but we
Always.
we get together to talk to each other about it, and I was like, what the hell is that? So a part of the aesthetic is showing that there is this intense underbelly going on, a multitude of things, and we have a capability, because we genuinely use more of our brains, to organize things in a fashion. I don't think I mean, there's never been a 3-act ballet preserved that done by a woman. What the hell is that about? We have a very different way of talking. The
I know.
critics, when they look at women's work, they use this other set of criteria to judge it. And I mean, I've had it with that. I don't care anymore. If I try to pitch my work, like I was trying to pitch my work about Big Beautiful, a piece that I did, and I was like, yes, there are 12 mohair sweaters hanging with mandalas. Then there are birds that, and they're just like in 10 seconds, they're lost. I was like, yes, I'm putting octopus tentacles on wheels using Talking Heads Remain in Light and Frank Sinatra. And they're like, I don't get it, you know?
I think we rely too much on words as a culture, and we have not really pay attention to all the other ways of communication that we have.
Totally, totally, totally. You know,
We rely too much on intellect, on
mhm.
words, on ideas that are already established and are all used and non-use, I think.
Yes, and the other thing is they take whatever that established concept is, which is really this middle ground of agreement, and
I know.
make all of their decisions from that thing down, you know, and that's again the issue with it's the data of the mind, you know, it's constructed with this limited white, usually male, usually
Yeah.
hetero, usually perspective. It's the colonizer mentality.
That we
Um,
carry, all of us. We are
yeah,
not exempted from that. Some people
no,
think they are not touched by that. We are all operating under that system,
absolutely, absolutely.
culturally speaking, educationally speaking, ideologically speaking.
In every way, in every way. And I think that that is something I feel that if we, for me, or whatever your, whatever person's individual mission is, for me, I need to help the body move out this one thing to make space to move in this new thing. And whatever that is, I think almost like folding time, you could begin to act almost immediately out of that center if we can repair it. I don't really know how I how that practically will translate, but I know that it translates practically because the most practical on earth are women. The most practical on earth are women, even though we have been relegated to this less than position. Um,
Thank you so much, Rich. It has
thank
been
you.
such a pleasure.
That's what we have to do it eye to eye, face to face,
Yes,
hand to hand.
absolutely. I think it,
Just
it has been a great surprise from me. I expected it was going to be a good conversation, but I didn't know that we were so connected. So I
we
really
are so
appreciate it.
connected. And I think you should start intentional empathy group. And I think you should start a women's group. Let's do it. Let's do it. We can make
Let's
stuff
do it.
together. I'm game.
Absolutely.
I'm game. Thank you
Absolutely.
so very much. What a beautiful way to spend the day. Yay. Bye.
Bye.